The Adult Ballet Studio is a podcast featuring conversations with the empowering voices of the adult ballet community, a world where passion has no limits and dreams can take flight. My name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm an adult ballet dancer and your host. Welcome to the studio. Happy Tuesday and Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to the Adult Ballet Studio. I hope everyone had a great holiday season, and thank you for continuing to listen to this podcast in 2024. I'm excited about what this year will bring and some of the guests that we have coming up. Speaking of guests, the person I'm talking to for this episode is so kind, intelligent, talented, and so much fun. I loved our conversation. Natalie Orr joined the studio this month, and we got deep and personal talking about ballet and body acceptance in dance. Natalie is a former professional dancer turned teacher and coach. She has more than 16 years of teaching experience, both as a dance teacher and in English as a foreign language teacher. And she says in this interview that she believes teaching and coaching is her true passion. She taught English in Madrid for many years, and she also led an online dance movement for adults and created a dance teaching company called Natalie Danza, where she ran classes, workshops, and retreats in London, Madrid, and Málaga. Now, after being bitten by the entrepreneurial bug once again, she says she's taken a step back from dancing herself to focus on running a life coaching business, which she's done for the past 4 years. She coaches people in embodiment and body-based intelligence, which she describes as the understanding that our bodies have intelligence we need to listen to just as much as our minds. She has a dance degree, a master's in dance anthropology from Roehampton University, London, and a master life coach certification and embodiment coach training. We talked about the struggle many dancers have with balancing work ethic and perfectionism and listening to our bodies, resting, and being kind to ourselves. She talked about the difference of being in a growth phase versus a nurturing phase and why both are important, which I thought was a good conversation for the new year as we're setting goals and looking ahead. It's easy to just plow forward or put pressure on ourselves to achieve this time of year, but we need to remember to rest and be kind to our bodies. We need to nurture ourselves and our talents as much as we need to grow. Through her work, Natalie does a great job reminding us of that. We also talked about her own personal journey with dance, including her ultimate decision to step away, although she says she still dances salsa and Brazilian samba just for herself. And we talked about the realities of chronic illness, her own journey with being diagnosed with endometriosis, and the challenges of being a person who menstruates or having a woman's body in ballet. I told you it was going to get personal, and I loved this conversation. I think these topics aren't talked about enough in the ballet community, and I was inspired by the things that Natalie had to share. Check out our conversation. Natalie, how are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you.
Yeah, how was your move? I know that you just moved into a new place.
Yeah, it's good. It's one of those things that's really exciting. And then when it actually happens, there are just little things that you didn't expect. So you're just kind of like sorting this thing out and then calling the plumber but
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here and all settled in. So it's really good. I'm just waiting for next week when I feel like things will calm down and I can settle in a bit more. But yeah, the cats are in, they're loving it. And it's a really beautiful sunny day today. So everything's good.
Oh, nice. That's great. Yeah, it takes like a week to settle in, but that's exciting.
Yeah, totally.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me in the midst of a big move and everything. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, of course. I was excited because I haven't done a podcast for really a while because of with the move, and then I just kind of I had my business on the back burner, let's put it like that. So I'm just with just my clients who I'm already with. I'm not doing any promo at the moment or anything, which has been really nice actually to have a bit of a breather. But I haven't done a podcast for a while, so I was like, yes, let's do it because they're so fun. I enjoy them so much.
Yes, they are. It's been a lot of fun. This is a pretty new one. I just started it a few months ago, but I listened to some of the other podcast interviews you've done and absolutely love them. So I have a lot of questions for you.
Oh, amazing. Of course. I'm excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I know, I started this podcast a few months ago and I've already gotten some messages from people requesting you to come on who just love your platform,
really?
love everything you're doing.
That's so fun.
Yeah, so it's really exciting that you're here.
Amazing.
But for anybody who might not know, could you just give sort of a brief overview of who you are and some of the work that you do?
Yes. Okay. So, well, I'm Natalie. I'm from the UK, but I live in Madrid now for the last 11 years. So Spain is really home for me now. And I guess like what am I right now? Right now I'm in a bit of a transition phase, but I am a coach really. I'm a coach. I'm a dance teacher and a coach. And really I think my biggest calling, whether through being a dance teacher or a coach, is to help people come home to their bodies. And I think I didn't really understand that aspect of my teaching for a long time because I thought, what I was supposed to be doing is teaching people movements. But when I really understood that it's so much easier for people to learn movements when they feel at home in their body, that was like a bit of a shift in my teaching. And then from there, I learned a lot through my own journey as well of like healing a chronic condition and just learning more about my own body, that so much kind of mental healing can also happen through connecting with our body and understanding ourselves and feeling at home in our bodies. So that's really my calling, and it's come in some different shapes on the outside world, I guess, but really fundamentally that's what it's about. And that's my own journey too, and I'm still on it, but it's very exciting and it's very fruitful, I'd say, to really like go deeper into that work, whether through the dance channel or through the kind of embodiment coaching direction as well.
Yeah, I love that. I'm really excited to talk about this because I was reading about some of the work that you do. And I think especially with ballet, we use our bodies as our instrument, but I think so many times people feel either disconnected from their bodies or maybe don't feel as at home with them because it's so rigorous and you're pushing yourself so hard. And I just think the work that you're doing and how you're marrying that with your dance teaching is so fascinating. And I know that you mentioned embodiment and you do body-based intelligence work. And I was curious, for people like me who are kind of new to those terms, how would you describe them, or how do you coach people on those things?
Yes. So I first of all just want to say I think one of the biggest misconceptions is, and dancers know this from the inside, but I think people looking at us from the outside, I think they think, well, we must all be very much at home in our bodies and we must have this incredible connection to our bodies and love our bodies and listen to our bodies. And I'm like, listen, what dancers are really good at is controlling their bodies. That's a different skill set. And yeah, dancers are amazing at controlling their bodies. They know how to create these beautiful shapes and transitions and do amazing things, but we're not, I mean, I don't see it really as part of mainstream dance training of like being in touch with our bodies and understanding how intelligent our bodies are. I think it's like we think our brains are intelligent and our bodies are just the instrument that we play on, which is true to a certain extent, but our bodies also contain an intelligence that is worth listening to, especially if we want to have a longer career, whether as a dancer or a dance teacher, or just someone who loves dancing and wants to be able to do it for their whole life, rather than just, I'm going to burn this body out by the time I'm 35 and then I'll have to do something else. Like for some people, that's their choice. Everyone has a choice, of course, but I'm kind of about the longevity, I think, because dance is such a wonderful thing that we get to do as humans. And I think that if we can create this relationship of understanding our bodies from, I always come from an evolutionary perspective. So just understanding ourselves as human animals, as well as obviously artistic and intelligent beings. But understanding our body from that perspective gives us, I don't know, I think it gives us an advantage in terms of taking care of ourselves, taking care of our bodies, and understanding really how that intelligence is communicated to us, because it's not through the usual forms of communication that we learn in, especially in the West, which is usually language. Even in a dance class, a lot of language is used to explain things. Of course, you also have the element of your teacher's body and watching your teacher's body and watching your own body and other people's bodies in class. So there's definitely that aspect, which is really important. But even that we have, I think we use language a lot and it's very, very useful, but it also has its limitation because language is an abstracted form of reality. And so there's something important about being in tune with the sensations in your body, the pain signals, the signals of even pleasure. And I know that can be associated with like sexual pleasure, but I just mean in general, like any kind of pleasurable sensation in the body, which should be happening while we dance. Hopefully a lot of the time, because it's part of the reason why we do dance is because it feels good. And so to be able to be in tune with all those things and to feel them and to notice them, and be able to tune into the body's wisdom as well as the mind, because the thing is, like in dance class, or I think in anything physical, there are people who want the best for us, but you're the only person that knows your body best. Even if a teacher wants the best for you and they would love to see you succeed and do well and all those things, they don't always know the pain signals that are there. They don't always know how tired you are. They don't always know the extra, maybe emotional burden that you've had that week, or whatever it is. And so it's really important that we tune into that, I believe, so that we can advocate for our own bodies, because otherwise, and I've lived this myself, our own brains can become accustomed to thinking that we should, like, what my legs should be up here by now, or I should be able to do my double pirouette on point, or I should be able to whatever, or I should be able to dance through this injury because my friend over there did it last year, or what we should on ourselves a lot. And it's not very kind to our bodies. And if we really want to have like a long and enjoyable career or dance teaching career, or just time to be able to dance or live in this body, then I think it's really helpful for us to undo a few of the like mental constructs that we've placed on ourselves because it's just tradition, and start to listen really to what the body is telling us and where our limits are, and also where we can push more. Although that's usually not the problem with lots of dancers, to be honest. There's other people in my life that I know where I encourage them to, like, you can actually do more, like you can challenge yourself, be brave, go for it. In general, that's not the case with dancers, especially not professional dancers. If anything, it's the other way around. It's, hey, can you be softer with yourself? Can you be kinder with yourself? Can you listen to your body more? Usually it's that way around for dancers.
Yeah, dancers push themselves so hard. And I think you're so right. I mean, it really is a language all its own, listening to your body, and it's your own language too. So you have to really tune into it. And I think it's so easy to lose sight of, as you said, the pleasure of dancing, or the fact that it feels good in your body, because you get so caught up on these expectations. I need to get my leg higher. I need to, do multiple pirouettes or whatever it is. But I love that you're focused on the longevity, because that for me was a really big thing. I knew that I wasn't going to become a professional dancer. I know that you danced professionally for a while, and I want to talk about that too. But I couldn't imagine, just stopping at age 30 because I was too old to dance. It was something that wasn't even an option for me. I just wanted to continue it. So I think what you're saying is so important about, trying to be kind to your body so that you can continue to dance for as long as you want to. And yeah. And I know that you say on your website that you think all humans have capacity to learn and grow, but they need sort of the right environment, including, a teacher or a coach who can encourage them. So how can you, I know you talked about this a little bit already, but how can you create that environment for yourself? And how do you go about finding, the right teacher or coach who can guide you in that process?
Such a good question. I honestly think in life, finding good teachers for things and people who support you it's not the same as finding a romantic partner, but there are some aspects which are similar, by which I mean, you're not necessarily going to find it the first class you show up at. Just like your very first boyfriend might not end up being your husband. Like, for some people it is great. They were lucky. But sometimes you have to experiment and try things. It's like getting your first pair of pointe shoes. Sometimes it's the one, but you have to go through the process of trying on a pair of pointe shoes to know what feel. You have to buy the first ones. You can't just find the perfect fit the very first time, if that makes sense. And I think it's the same with teachers, because some people need more encouragement. Some people need people who will challenge them. Some people need more opportunities to develop their artistry and performance. Some people need more focus on technique. So it depends who you are and what you need. So I think there's also a temptation to just want to go for maybe like the highest status teachers or the high status school, or and that they have a place, of course. That's why they're so good and they're so well renowned, but it's not necessarily the right place for everyone. And the teachers that have trained, or the teachers who've been ex-professionals, they're amazing for some students and they're not amazing for other students. So it's really about getting to know yourself, I think, and what you need and why you're doing it. Why are you dancing? Like, what are your reasons for doing this? And there are no right or wrong reasons, because I think that's another misconception. Is like, well, if I'm not just trying to get better every single day, do I even deserve to dance ballet? And I think particularly in the ballet world, that mentality, I've heard it a few times from other people and from my own head. So there's definitely that moment of being able to like be honest with ourselves, and why are we doing this, and what are we looking for, and what do we need, and giving yourself permission to enjoy the journey. That's something that I've talked about for many, many, many years, right from the beginning of when the kind of online adult ballet community movement, is that you're allowed to enjoy this journey. And so find a teacher who allows you to enjoy the journey. It doesn't come at the end. When you don't just enjoy ballet when you've got your double pirouette point. Don't wait for that point, please. That's a waste of your time. Like, enjoy this process, enjoy the learning process, and whatever that means for you. For some people, they find bar like a meditation, and they love going to class and having that meditative state at the bar, and that's enough for them, or that's what they like to focus on. For other people, they want performance opportunities, and they want opportunities to be even in like a group dance and have that kind of community experience. So it's about knowing what you want for your own dancing and for your own life. And what there's also a question, and I encourage people to really think about this right now, between what, because it'll change as well. What you want from your dancing will change over time. I encourage people to think about whether they're in a nourishment phase or a growth phase right now, because I know that it's very popular to talk about like constant growth, consistent growth. And that's, in my opinion, that's a problem that is very deep in all aspects of our culture. Like, we talk about GDP, and we talk about financial growth, and we talk about educational growth, and like as if we're supposed to be constantly growing. But growth without nourishment can lead to some really bad outcomes. And we just have to look around at nature and understand that things are cyclical. We're supposed to have seasons. Plants and animals, they understand this. Like, that we go in cycles, with cyclical beings, and especially women. I mean, we are literally cyclical in our like monthly cycle. So it's really important to also remind yourself to have phases of growth and phases of nourishment. And what I mean by nourishment is, maybe in your nourishment phases in your dance classes or your dance performances or whatever, the goal there is to express yourself, or it's to embody a character, or it's to have fun, or it's to just live the music, become the music, rather than right now I'm pushing for this next technical challenge. Those are easier to measure, which is why they're really tempting. And we should do them, of course. Like, it's really fun to grow and develop as well. That's not to take away from that fact, but I think lots of people are in tune with that side of things and not as in tune with the nourishment side of things. So I think it's important to have a balance. And so for me, for example, when I was training at the conservatoire, I was also dancing salsa and bachata, and I wasn't trying to get better at salsa and bachata then. I just was doing it because I needed an outlet where I felt like I could dance and not be judging myself, or not be worrying about what it looked like. And I just wanted to dance and feel free and to enjoy it. So that was actually, it was kind of ironic, because I was so tired that I almost didn't need to be doing another dance style, but that was my nourishment. That was my nourishment to be able to get through that very difficult year. So yeah, I encourage people to give themselves permission to do both. You don't always have to be in growth. And if you're in a growth moment right now and you're enjoying it and you've got energy behind it, amazing, like, go for it. But you're allowed to have periods of nourishment in your dance journey as well.
Yeah, I love that advice. I love the idea of focusing on nourishment as well as growth, because I think you're right. We often are just like full speed ahead trying to reach our goals.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like the periods where I'm focusing on nourishment and doing things just because I love it, growth happens just kind of by default, because
Yes.
it just comes out of that nourishment. So yeah, I think that's really great advice, especially in dance, but really in all aspects of your life. Studying at the conservatory where you studied dance, and you've been, a former professional dancer as well. So I just wanted to talk about your career, because you've done so much. And I wanted to kind of start off with your dance career and what you learned from the professional environment and how that sort of applies to the work that you're doing now.
Okay. Well, this was a lot of years ago. So I'm 36 now, and I dance professionally from 21 to 23, something like that. So I was only dancing professionally for 2 years, and I was also teaching at the same time. I think I've always been more of a teacher than a performer. It was always the type of, some people, that kind of nervous excitement that they get, that feeds them, or it can hinder you. For me, it hindered me in performance, but before teaching in class, I had that nervous excitement, and then it brought out the best in me. I don't know if that makes sense, but for some people, I think it's the other way around. So I think I've always been a teacher at heart, but what I learned from dancing professionally, that's such a good question. First, let me say, like, I didn't dance ballet professionally. I was dancing salsa, samba, reggaeton, Latin fusion in Leeds and London in the UK. And I was so lucky because I worked for an incredible company, and the head of our company, who I'm still friends with now, she was just such a big-hearted lover of dance, and I learned actually so much from her about enjoying dance, because I just finished my dance degree, and so it had all been about, again, growth, learn, do better, and then I graduated, and kind of ironically, probably, my degree was in contemporary dance, and so kind of ironically, I didn't go into performing contemporary. I went into the Latin stuff, because I think that's always been for me where I've found that there's a lot of joy and nourishment in those dance styles and in the people who are attracted to those dance styles. And of course, that's an overgeneralization, but that was just my experience at the time. And so what I really learned from her is to enjoy it, and that it didn't have to be perfect, and that we worked very, very hard in training, and we put a lot of energy into developing like beautiful routines and beautiful like ways of dancing together and coming together as a group of dancers. But that really, I think that what was such an interesting shift is the difference between dancing for people who are marking you, whether that's in an exam or a degree. So dancing for them versus dancing for an audience who might not necessarily be experts in dance. And she taught me so much about what that meant. And I think through that process, I also realized that that made it more fun for me as well, because if I'm focused on them enjoying my dancing, and what that means is not that it has to be perfect and super technical. Of course, the technique was underneath it. It always is. But that it was about me being in the energy of joy. And especially for anyone who's ever seen Brazilian samba, it's so joyful. It's so fun. It's so energetic. And understanding that that was an equally important part as the actual dance and the actual choreography was really big for me, because I hadn't fully, I think, learned that before. And it's interesting because over the last few years, I've been dancing less and less and less, and that's been an intentional choice. I mean, I still dance salsa bachata for me a lot, and I still have some one-to-one ballet clients, so I'm still in touch with that world. But it's been really interesting looking back on all like the last, so I guess, yeah, 15 years from when I was dancing professionally to now, and just acknowledging that I didn't fully appreciate what a good dancer I was. And I think a lot of dancers can maybe relate to this as well, is that you just always wish you were better, and you spend so much time wishing you were better, and wondering when's that going to happen, and I'm working towards it, but there's always like those goalposts out there way in front of you. And I mean, Ella, who was the boss of Element Dance Company that I used to work for, she really helped me to see that there was another way, but I couldn't fully jump into it. And that's because I had some of my own healing work to do, like emotional stuff and things about feeling worthy as a person and as a dancer and things. She showed me the way. I couldn't walk the path fully. I could like walk next to it and be like, that's cool. And I experienced little bits of it, but I wasn't ready then. And I think after I finished at the Conservatoire in Spain, where I did study classical ballet, after I left, that was a very deliberate decision in my head. Like, I'm going to enjoy this now. And I really did enjoy ballet after that. It was a very intentional decision that I made. But at the same time, while I really enjoyed it, there was still a part of me that was like, I wish I was better. And now now I laugh, and it's so ironic because I understand now, like, I'm in a very different part of my life journey, I think. And now I'm much more focused on like my husband and slowing down a bit and enjoying life and hopefully starting a family and all of these things. And it's just knowing that that's the next chapter of my life, and that I've basically set down those goalposts for like the dancer that I thought I should have become in my life. It's really interesting to look back. And so I don't want this story to be depressing. I'm trying to share this story to say, enjoy how good you are now, because I wish in moments that I'd been able to do that for myself. And I got like glimpses of it, and I definitely enjoyed how good I was as a teacher. I'd say as a teacher, I definitely felt like I'd gotten to a place probably in my late 20s where I was really happy with how I taught people and what I'd learned and how I can actually help people to become not just the best dancer that they want to be, but the best version of themselves through dance. That was something that I was so passionate about. And it took me like a decade to get there, but I kind of got there. And then I was like, I'm happy with what I'm doing. But I never got to the point of being like, tick in the box of I'm the dancer that I want to be. And that's okay. Like we all learn from these experiences, but I just want to encourage everybody right now, whatever level you are, you get to enjoy it right now, and you get to celebrate the level that you're at right now while still moving forward and growing if that's what you want.
Yeah. I think that's so important. And I don't think that's a depressing story at all. I actually think it's incredibly inspiring. Because I think a lot of dancers struggle with that. And, I'm inspired by all of the work that you've done as, a teacher and, a professional dancer yourself. But I think this is the most inspiring piece to me because it's so hard to say, I need to take a break or I need to step back from this or maybe set a boundary. And I know you announced a few years ago that you were sort of taking a step back from dance to focus on other things. And I'm just curious how, could you walk me through that process a little bit, how you sort of came to that decision and what you would say to other dancers who are maybe struggling with wanting to take a step back, but then feeling like maybe they've failed or they haven't achieved their goals or gotten to where they need to be? Like, how do you work through that in your head?
Oh my goodness. It's very deep, at least from like, I can give the surface level answer, which is there are many different paths, and you thought you were going down one, and all of a sudden you get to change direction whenever you want to. That's the kind of surface level answer. Like, there was never one destiny for you. We all have infinite potential in some ways. I know that's kind of a crass phrase, but there are so many things that you could have done, and you are not obliged. Well, some people feel differently about this, but what I at least believe for myself is that you are not obliged just because you have a talent in something. You are not obliged to be chained to that thing for your whole life. And some people will disagree, and some people will be like, but we wouldn't have had Mozart if he didn't feel like that. I mean, I don't know. It's a difficult one because there are lots of different philosophies on talent and on being gifted in a certain thing, and that you have this like service that you should be giving to the world to enjoy your dancing or your whatever it is. Like somehow you owe it to other people, but I actually don't believe that. I believe that we can all be of service in the world, but you get to choose how that is. You get to choose what that looks like. You get to choose what that is, and that your dancing doesn't have to be in service to anyone other than yourself. And ironically, when you dance for you is usually when most people enjoy it anyway, from the outside too. So that's kind of an ironic one. But to be really honest, like going a little bit deeper, I really had to get to a point where I was also okay with disappointing people around me, whether family or teachers or whatever, because when you have people around you who see your potential, and I'm very aware of this as a teacher because I try to encourage people, but I try not to add the pressure on with the encouragement of like, and I expect you to do this because I see you can do it. Like I see you have the potential to do it. Everybody gets to choose what they do with their time and their energy. But I think for any dancers who are wondering, like, oh, there's this other thing, or I've always been called to teaching, or I've always been called to like directing or choreography or coaching or whatever it was. For me, it was a switch to coaching. And really what it was not that I was brave enough to just make the leap. It was honestly, it got to a point where the pain of not coaching was too much. And that was really what drove it, because I just was like, this is too good not to share. And I felt so drawn to doing it that the pain of not doing it was too much in the end. I wish I could say that all my decisions in life have been led by like pleasure and curiosity and I don't know, that kind of thing. Some of them have been. There's always a mixture, but to be honest, sometimes it's just that you have to go into the pain of disappointing people, and that everybody thought they knew who you were because they have the dancer label on your head, and that's who you are, and that's how they know you. And then you're going to change, and they're going to be like, I don't understand. I thought you were a dancer, and I thought dance was your life. And it's a strange one, because you know, they're not the ones that have to show up and dance every day. It's you who has to do that. But you have to be okay with making other people comfortable in order to choose your own life path. I think that's ultimately what it is. And just being kind to yourself and reminding yourself that usually people's disappointment is temporary. And usually after a while, once they understand, also people are scared for you. Because especially for people who haven't made big changes in their own lives, they get scared that you're making changes, and they don't quite understand it, and they don't know if it's going to work out, and they have a relationship with failure which is debilitating. But you don't have to. You can try something. And like, I failed many times. I've failed so many times in this journey, and I think, again, from the outside, people have forgotten those failures. They've seen them along the way because I've shared them many times. Like, I built like an online platform for adult dancers, and then I closed it after like 2 months of being online or something. And so many others along the way. I made lots of mistakes running like the first adult ballet holiday. It was amazing and people enjoyed it, but there were so many things that I saw like, that didn't do that very well, didn't do that very well. And the second one as well. I mean, I learned some lessons and I made other mistakes. So you get to have the relationship that you want with failure as well. And there's always a risk when you change from doing something that you've always done and something that you've always known, if that's dance, to doing something, even if it's still in the dance world, but something slightly different. So you have to be okay with knowing that people will be disappointed, they will be confused. You have to trust yourself. You have to allow yourself to fail. And I think you need a good community of people around you. It doesn't have to be everyone. You really need like 1 or 2 people that get it. I've been very lucky to have connected with people on Instagram. I just want to shout out to Julie from Brush Ballet, because she was one of the people that I was lucky enough to connect with back like many years ago now. And we've been on kind of parallel but different journeys, and we've always been there for each other as people who get it. You need just someone who gets what you're trying to do. Just 1 or 2 people who get what you're trying to do. And then on the other side, my husband doesn't get what I'm trying to do a lot of the times, but what he does understand, or what he shows me, is like that I don't need to be anybody in particular in order for him to love me. And that was very healing for me for like a very long time, because I always thought that I had to be this person in order to be lovable. And really my decision to be able to step back from dance as well was partly when I asked him one question, which was like, but if I don't dance anymore, will you still be as attracted to me? And he was like, he looked at me like, what the hell even question is that? And when he was like, Natalie, I don't love you, or I'm not attracted to you because you're a dancer. And I was like, what? But I thought that was like who I am. And like, what do you mean? Why the hell do you love me then? So even just that, but it was so crazy because we'd been together for already like 6 or 7 years at that point, and I just never thought to ask him, because for me that was who I was. So I couldn't even imagine that he could see me in a way that wasn't Natalie the dancer or the dance teacher at that point. So yeah, I'd say like just having 1 or 2 people that can just like cheer you on along the journey and be there when things go wrong, and someone else who just appreciates you for who you are as a human being, not necessarily as a dancer. If you have those 2 people in any different form, you can do it. But also, if you don't have those 2 people, go and find them. Julie wasn't in my life for my whole life. You know, we met much later, and that was such a blessing. And you know, I've been with my husband for like over 10 years now, but I think it's never too late to find those people if you don't have them around you now. And know that no one person will have everything you're looking for. So you're going to need a few different people, but that they're out there. And if you want to make a change, if you want to make a shift, it can be really scary reaching out to someone who's already doing something similar. But usually, I mean, I know that when anyone reaches out to me, I love it, because I'm like, yeah, I want to encourage you to do this because I know how scary it is. I remember. And so I know we can be shy about it sometimes, but I encourage you to do it. And if people say no, it's usually nothing to do with you. It's never anything to do with you. They're either just busy or something else. So don't get discouraged. But yeah, that's what I would encourage people to do is don't think that you have to do all of this alone, and don't think that it's all about, oh, your mindset isn't good enough if you can't do this by yourself. You've obviously still got blocks and things. Like, yes, your mindset is important, but community is also really important.
Yeah, that community is so important. And shout out to your husband, I mean, for being so supportive. Incredible story. And I love the shout out to Julie as well. She's great. But yeah, I love that advice because I think having that community really does help you cope with failure and cope with, this idea of disappointing people, which is something that's so hard for us, especially as dancers. It's not how our brains
Yes.
are wired. And that's a big reason why I wanted to start this podcast, is because I feel like I found that so much in the adult ballet community in particular. And I just wanted to have conversations with people in the community to sort of bring everyone together, because I just think it's a great group of dancers who are very like-minded and want to just continue dancing throughout their whole lives and are just doing it because they love it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's important advice. And I know you talked a little bit about your journey when you were dancing professionally, of sort of, you've spoken on other podcasts as well about kind of struggling with feeling out of tune with your body and not really feeling like you were at home with it. And I know you mentioned that part of that was dealing with a chronic illness. I don't know if you'd be okay to talk about that and how that sort of played a part in, becoming more in tune with your body and kind of that journey of working through it.
Yes, absolutely. It's a long-ish story, but I'll try and like summarize a little bit. So I struggled with endometriosis since I was 16. I didn't know that's what it was called at the time because that was 20 years ago. So it wasn't known like it is now. And I was just put on the pill basically, and carried on like that. And obviously being on the pill allowed me to dance as well in a way that wasn't in line with my actual body and my actual hormones, because the pill was making it as if I didn't really have a cycle. It was masking it because it's not my hormones. And so I got used to dance. I kind of honestly like lived my life trying to be a man, really trying to like pretend like I was in a man's body and I could train like a man, and it's not that we can't train well and be incredible dancers. We absolutely can, but I just didn't understand my body, and no one was really educating about that at the time, at least in the institutions that I was studying in. And I think even now there's a lack of education about women during their fertile years. Like we just most dance institutions don't understand how that works, what we should be training in which part of the month, how we can support our bodies, how we can support our hormones. And so I had no idea. I was just trying to like basically do my absolute best every day, not understanding that my best every day changes a little bit throughout the month. And yeah, so that was kind of like that phase of my life, university and dancing professionally. I was still on the pill, and then at some point I really knew like I want to come off the pill and see what's going on in my body, because I just had this feeling like, first of all, I want to know. My mental health wasn't amazing, but because I'd gone on the pill when I was 16, I didn't know, is this me? Is this who I am? Or is this the pill? Like, am I grumpy and a bit short with people because that's my personality? Or is it the pill? So I was also like just interested to see that. And then I think a deeper part of me knew that at some point I wanted to know if I would ever be able to be fertile, and I wanted to know that. And so I came off the pill, and it was really a very, very difficult journey, because I just had these periods that I couldn't do anything. Like, yeah, during my period I couldn't do anything, and in for 1 or 2 days of my period, especially the first day, but sometimes it would be 2 days, I was just in bed like writhing in pain. And people thought I was kind of crazy for suffering through that, and they were like, why don't you just go back on the pill? But I felt so much better for the rest of the month that I was like, I'm just going to bear it, because for the other like 3 weeks I felt really good. So that's why I kind of persevered, and I didn't know at that point that there was really much hope. I just thought, well, I feel better for the rest of these 3 weeks, and then I'll just suffer through this. And I learned different things to help with the pain a little bit, but I didn't know there was a possibility of healing it. And lots of people still don't know that. And lots of the medical community still don't talk about that. There are some amazing doctors who do, who have a more like holistic approach, but who are also, trained in medicine. But I don't think it's that widespread yet. The answer is still usually the pill or surgery. Now people are talking much more about nutrition and also about the links with trauma. I mean, that's still a little bit more niche, but from my personal experience, it's worked. And it has, how let me just go through some like more practical things for people. So for example, for me, cutting out gluten completely changed my life, and I was gutted about having to do that because pasta's literally my favorite food since I was a little girl. So I was absolutely gutted. But when I did it properly for a whole month, I realized like, oh my goodness, I feel so much better. And not only my period was less painful, but my digestion was better. So I was like, damn it, well, I can't ignore like my body at this point. It's literally shouting to me, please continue to do this. So I did. And then so that was like kind of the nutrition stuff. There's many other things I could say, but that for me was the biggest one, the biggest change. Oh, and I stopped drinking alcohol as well, but that was a long time before that. And then in terms of understanding how much tension I was holding around my womb area. So obviously for dancers, we know, yes, you're told engage your lower abdominals, pull up your pelvic floor, all of those things I've been taught for many, 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 many years. And they're really useful while you're dancing. And in the rest of your daily life, you shouldn't be doing that. And I didn't know that. So I was just walking around in a constant state of tension. And the message that your body is sending your brain when you're doing that is there is a threat. I seem to be on high alert. If my body is on high alert, there must be a reason. Therefore, my brain is releasing more cortisol. And I'm just living in this constant state of survival, basically. And I just got so used to it that I had no idea there was another way to exist. I just thought you're constantly like clenching and tight. And also there's this, we could talk about the whole, I don't know, like beauty standards and all of that. There was also this thing that I was like, well, I like my body looks better when I'm tensing my abs all the time, so I don't want to relax them because then my belly's not perfectly flat. And it's like, yeah, it's not supposed to be perfectly flat all the time, all day, after a meal, when I'm on my period, like all those things. And so just getting to a point of acceptance as well, more about my body and understanding. And I had to teach my body to relax my muscles. Like that was a natural thing that I untaught myself. And so then I had to reteach myself how to be in a state of relaxation because my body had completely forgotten how to do that. And I think even while I was asleep, I was still tensing because I'd just gotten so used to doing it. So that was a really big part of my journey. And then when you start to understand the links between where you hold tension in your body, so like the muscles, but then also the organs are affected by what your muscles are doing. So and the uterus also has muscles. So all of this was also related to a lot of the way that I thought about myself as like a woman, or the resistance I had to being in a female body, not because I ever thought I was a man, but just because I felt like life was unfair to me because I couldn't train how men train and have that same just day cycle. I had this monthly cycle that seemed to be an inconvenience because I didn't know how to use it to my advantage. And also just through things that had happened to me in my own personal life, I learned that, or I thought that I had learned, it's not true, but I thought that I'd learned that it was easier to be a man in this world than to be a woman. And that in order to be loved as a woman and to like have a lifelong partnership, that I would need to be perfect in all moments. And that's something that's impossible to live with and impossible to attain. So I think from there, I started to relax. And it's a really painful process as well, because then you're releasing what you thought you had control of. Like if I thought what I had control of in my marriage was to be perfect and to look perfect and to be a good dancer and all the other things I thought was what was necessary, as you release that, there's a lot of sadness that goes with it. And that can look many different ways for different people. But there was a grieving process for me while there was also acceptance. And I think, the healing process can sometimes be glorified on Instagram, and that's fair enough. Like, it's nice to encourage people to, it's the same that the class videos are usually people dancing nice exercises or variations. It's not when someone falls out of a pirouette or they cry because whatever has happened during class. Those aren't the bits that we see. And so the same as a healing journey, but with any type of learning process. And I think healing is it's relearning in some ways the things that we've forgotten or we were conditioned out of. It's uncomfortable as well. And so, but understanding that helps you to go through the process. And so this was emotional healing journey simultaneous with the healing of my endometriosis. And now I have normal periods, and I just never ever ever thought that was going to be possible for me. Like, they're not perfect, they're not completely pain-free, but I go about my daily life. Like, I don't have to stop, I don't have to lie in bed. Sometimes I go and lie in bed because it's nice to be able to get on my period, and I understand that sometimes that's what my body wants, not because it has to scream in pain to force me to do it, but because I sometimes choose to go and have a nap on the first day of my period or something like that. So it's a choice. So yeah, that's kind of the short version of a very long story.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm so glad that you found healing. And I really appreciate you speaking out and sort of sharing your journey to that, because I think you're right. It can sometimes be glorified, or you just see the good snippets on social media, and it's important to get the full picture. And I just think this is such an important conversation. I mean, we could talk for another hour about this probably, because, especially in ballet or in any form of dance, like, we don't talk about our periods enough. And I know you've spoken about, feeling sort of burdened by your period when you were dancing, and you just talked about kind of feeling burdened by just being a woman and having a woman's body and everything that goes along with that. And I think a lot of dancers feel that way. I know I did, when I was dancing, because it's like there's this mentality in ballet of just sort of push through the pain and just no matter what, keep going. And that's not always the healthiest thing, as you talked about, feeling at home in your body and really taking care of your body is important first and foremost. But I also think, with things like endometriosis, women's health is so under-researched and underfunded. And, especially with something like dance, when you're dealing with something like that, it's so easy to feel alone. So I think it's so important that people like you are speaking out and sharing your story.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, honestly, because like you said, we need to talk about this. And so many of us experience things that are either similar or somewhat related. And just to know that, you're not alone and you're not weak. That's the most important thing to know. Like, you're not weak to suffer pain. You're not weak to get tired. You're not weak. Like, this is not about weakness. This is about different bodies doing different things. And also, like I said before, understanding that when you have other stuff going on in your life. So for example, I just bought a flat and moved flats. And even now, I still have to remind myself, and I've been doing this for so many years, I still have to remind myself, like, I'm not tired because I'm weak. And like, I haven't been to the gym yet, which I'm excited to like join the gym again. Or at least like do something. I did go to salsa matata last week, finally. But I still, the judgment thoughts still come up, even though I know what they are. And I think, oh, I am on top of it. And then they'll come up and I'll be like, what is this? Like, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. Why am I so tired? Why this? Why that? Like, I'm not even dancing that much. I'm not even working out. And then it's like, no, the emotional stress of moving your life from not just one flat to another flat, but one neighborhood to a completely different neighborhood where you don't know anyone and everything's new and the routines are gone because I had to leave that salsa matata class and join a new one, and etc. So those are the things as well that I think as dancers specifically, we associate tiredness sometimes with physical tiredness. And so we can get confused if we're tired for an emotional reason. But that's equally as valid. The body gets really tired from like pumping out the stress hormones. Like, that's not good for us chronically. Yeah. So I still have to remind myself all the time as well that yes, it's normal that I'm not feeling 100% myself and that this is not permanent. That's the other thing.
Yeah, this isn't permanent and you're not weak. I think that's such important advice to repeat to yourself when you have those doubts that are creeping in. And I know we're getting close to the end, but I did have one more question I
Of
want to ask
course.
you because I know you touched on some of the body image issues in ballet, and I think that's a huge topic as well. I was the same as you, when I was really seriously dancing in high school and college, I was walking around like I have to keep my alignment, I have to keep everything tight, and I don't want to fall out of those habits. And I think even
Yeah.
beyond that, just kind of, I was talking to a dancer the other day who's an incredible dancer and was kind of talking about how she feels like she doesn't have the ballerina body, the stereotypical one. And whenever people talk about that, I'm kind of like, what does that even mean? I mean, you love ballet,
Yeah.
you're good at it, you have a ballet body, but I think, it's valid to have those thoughts. A lot of dancers have them. And I'm curious, well, number one, how you hope the dance and ballet world kind of changes to accommodate more body acceptance and what, teachers can do to foster an environment like that in their studios. And also when those, self-doubts and self-criticisms creep in, what can dancers do to kind of fight back against them?
One of the best things is to get out of your bubble. And what I mean by that is so many people, yeah, I think like, look at me. I mean, I don't think I have a ballet body anymore in terms of the traditional sense. Like, I certainly have a ballet body because I dance ballet and I'm still pretty good at it. But it's so ironic because when I was dancing samba, this is what I mean about getting out of your bubble. Get out of your dance bubble that's like only one narrative that has like one stereotypical body type. Where get out of your dance bubble and go and do a different dance, and it will just remind you of like the multitude of ways that exist to be a human and to be appreciated in the dance world. Because when I was dancing samba as a professional, the girls around me tended to be a little bit more curvaceous than I was. And that was something that I desperately, desperately, desperately wanted. And the irony of that is that other people look at me in the ballet world and they're like, oh, maybe I wish I had more of like Natalie's bone structure. And I'm looking at them thinking I would love to have their curves and be able to dance salsa and samba with that. So we're all looking at other people thinking this thing's better, that thing's better, and there is no better. Like, it's all part, I mean, it's partly context dependent, and I'm not going to like completely delete the history of ballet. It's a European art form, the same as I don't think it's right to delete, like that samba comes from Brazil and that Brazilians tend to have a slightly different body shape. Of course, there's all different kinds of body shapes, of course, but there are certain things that are stereotypes, and I don't think we need to delete that in order to talk about being more inclusive. Because sometimes I think those conversations can go to quite extremes and people are very black or white about it. Like, it's either all or it's only this thing. But we can appreciate the heritage of a dance form and we can appreciate where it came from without needing to feel threatened by it, but still giving ourselves permission to be like, I'm going to do this, even if the top directors of like some Russian companies don't agree with you and they're like, no, your body will never be able to be in the Bolshoi, whatever. Like, okay, fine, let them sit, but like, don't wait for everybody to give you permission to dance ballet with your body, because it might not happen, because there is a culture, there is a whatever, like history and traditions, and there is an aesthetic, and I'm not going to delete any of that. And at the same time, you absolutely get to choose for yourself, I'm going to dance because I love doing this thing. And ballet can look amazing on so many different bodies. I mean, that's obvious to me. Maybe it's not obvious to everyone, but to me, it's super obvious. So sometimes I find, that question kind of funny because I'm like, but it's so obvious. Like, people with, because I've seen it in class all the time, people who are super tall or a bit shorter. And that's the same in different companies as well. You get very varying heights of dancers, or, more muscular, more curvaceous, less curvaceous, more skinny, whatever. Like, ballet can look amazing on all different types of bodies. To me, it's just so obvious at this point, but I guess we need to keep repeating it because for some people it might not be that obvious. For me, it's super obvious. But you can also, there's always ways to work with your body to make your dancing like beautiful and aesthetic. Because I think the difficult thing when talking about this with ballet, it's easier in some other dance styles, I think, because aesthetics are not such a big part of the actual participation in the dance style. So for example, salsa and bachata, like, if you go to any night in London or Madrid or wherever, and you go and there's like people dancing of all different shapes and sizes, like, and no one bats an eyelid. It's just like, yeah, of course. But in ballet, we can't take away from the fact that, especially in the performance world, there is, we're looking for a certain line. Like, there are right and wrongs in ballet, and that's one of the beautiful things about it, and it's one of the hardest things about it. So this also is not an easy conversation, because you have to live in the nuance of the fact that it is an aesthetic dance style. We care about how it looks at the same time as we want to care about how it feels. I think that's an important balance to find. But that you can always do things to understand your own body. And I think, and always is a way to make things look beautiful on anybody. I 100% believe that. And as a teacher, I've seen it. I've definitely seen it. And even for me, I know people might look and be like, oh, well, that's easy for her to say, blah, blah, blah. But in the levels that I was training at, I had terrible knees for ballet. Like, my knees they're not even straight. They're a little bit like knobbly knees, which, everyone wants the hyper-extended lines or whatever. But instead of being like, oh, well, that's terrible, I should just walk away, I was like, I'm going to find out how to work with my leg lines and create the most beautiful lines that I can with my legs, and figure out. And then again, and I wasn't on a stage, but Gillian Murphy, she doesn't have the best knees, and she's an incredible dancer. Everyone celebrates. So, there are also professionals that you can see and celebrate, and people will be like, yeah, but they're the exceptions. But there are more and more exceptions, I think, if that makes sense. Like, every year we're seeing more people who are exceptions to the ballet rules, and that trend will just continue. And so there's one thing to have this conversation if we're talking about professionals, and then there's another thing if you just want to dance. Like, you don't need any type of anything, just go and dance. And if your teacher's like commenting on how your body is, and not in a way that's like encouraging, like, hey, would you like to develop this set of muscles, I can help you to do that. But if they're just commenting on like your bone structure, get the hell out of there. That's not the place for you. And that teacher should only, like, just don't put yourself through it. There's no need. There's so many supportive dance teachers out there now, like both ex-professional and people who've just trained to be dance teachers, and people who, find someone who appreciates your body, because your body is worth being appreciated, and you can dance ballet with the body you have. I mean, I have no doubt about that whatsoever. It's just a fact.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to dance, just dance. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, creating the right environment for you to succeed and achieve your goals. It's all about, finding the right teachers and just doing it because you love it and not worrying about anything else. So yeah, I think you've shared a lot of great advice, and this has been such a good conversation. We do have, at the very end of the podcast, I always like to do something I call the Petit Allegro section. It's just a bunch of quick
oh my God, not Petit Allegro.
I know, I feel the same way. I know, so much anxiety.
I love a challenge.
So I was curious, when you were dancing, what was the sort of go-to item in your dance bag that you had to have at every class or every rehearsal?
The first thing that comes to mind is my water bottle, but that's so basic.
So important.
I mean, seriously, and I really appreciated it, because in the conservatoire we weren't allowed to drink during bar. We were only allowed to drink at the end of bar, between bar and center. And I'd gotten used to drinking whenever I wanted in my like normal adult ballet classes, and then I really, really appreciated being able to hydrate. And I was like, this is really weird. I'm not sure that I'm down with this like old school method, whatever. But like, yeah, sorry, that's such a boring answer, but really, like, hydration is so important. Make sure that you drink before, during, and after dance. Like, I don't go to any dance, even salsa and bachata, where lots of people don't take it because it's not exactly like a workout class, the same as ballet would be. But I take it there. Like, I take water everywhere with me if I'm going to move my body.
I'm the same way. I can't imagine people not taking water to salsa and bachata. I feel like it's so social, and you're the music is so high energy that you would need
yeah. No, people just seem to, I don't know, maybe my body's not that great at like staying hydrated if I've drunk something. But I just feel like maybe your body just learns whatever you give it. But I need to have a drink close to me.
Yeah, I mean, the water
As
bottle
often
is
as
important.
possible. Yes.
That's great. And then I know that you just moved into a new place. So I was curious if there's a piece of home decor or something that's important to you that you always have to have in every place that you live.
Oh, well, I do still have my ballet bars. They're not up here because I'm teaching in a studio with my like one-to-one clients at the moment, so I don't need it. But they have come, those ballet bars have been in the UK, in Malaga, in Madrid, in 3 different flats, and in 3 different dance studios as well. So they've really been around, my ballet bars. I love them so much. But is there anything else? I mean, I would probably say my cats. They're not an object,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it was like I have one on top of me right now. He's been here for the whole
Pretty.
but when we moved in here, the night that we brought, because we moved, we came and painted and then we brought the furniture. And the night that we brought the cats, that was when we were like, we're really in now. So they're like the most beautiful decoration in the flat. Obviously, they're not decoration, but you know what I mean. Like whenever I see them in a place, I'm like, I'm home. My fur
Yes.
babies.
They make it home. I have to say, I love that. A lot of people who come on this podcast are cat people, and I just love it so much because I have 2 cats too. They're the best.
Yay! Oh, they're just the best. They're just
Yeah,
amazing. And they're such inspirations for like flexibility, relaxing. They're just, I always remind myself, I'm like, what would Kala do right now? And I'm
yeah,
like, she would have a
exactly.
nap or she would stretch before she had to like go and do something. I'm like, yeah,
Right. They're
cats.
good reminders of self.
Body inspo. Yeah.
Exactly. Speaking of self-care, do you have a favorite self-care item or self-care routine that you like to do?
Mm, that's such a good question. I've had different answers for this in different years. This year, I mean, my main thing is always to just tune back into my body. That's ultimately the best self-care that I know I can do. And I still don't always do it. And I still forget. And I still overwrite what my body says with what my brain's saying sometimes because it's just too difficult to do, to like go against what I think is the quote unquote right thing to do. Um, but I mean, a really basic one that I really am appreciating right now is it's got really cold in Madrid really quickly. Madrid is really hot in the summer and then really cold in the winter. Um, is my in Spain they say jojoba oil, but it's jojoba oil, or I don't know how to pronounce it. But this oil is like my go-to every single night. Like I don't do anything fancy. I think people think that I must have like a fancy skincare routine and that kind of thing. I don't. I literally just like wash my face with soap and then use my oil. And that has been my like, I don't know, it's like the moon of self-care in the evening because the oil feels like so luxurious and I just do that before I go to bed. And it's simple, but it's a moment for me. And it's something that I know is like good for my skin because I live in a really dry climate. Madrid is very dry. So it's a basic one, but it's one that I've done for many, many years. And that feels like when you can turn your routines into rituals, I think that's a really great, like, I don't want to say life hack because I don't love that word, but it's kind of that, you know, when the things that you always, when you, that you have to do or you need to do for whatever reason, you can turn it into a ritual that feels like self-care. That's a really good way to like enjoy life more.
It is. It's such a good feeling, especially those bedtime skincare routines, even if they're just simple soap and, some
Yeah.
oil. It just makes you feel like you're winding down for the day. It makes you feel so
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good
Exactly.
answer. And then the last question I always ask everybody who comes on the podcast, in a perfect world, what would ballet or what would dance look like?
Oh my goodness. I really have an answer for this as I've thought about it a lot. So I haven't spoken about this today, but I have a master's in dance anthropology. That's completely, it wasn't practical, it was all theory, but it was really thinking about why do we dance as humans? What's even the point? Like, why do we do it? Why can we do it? How can it be in our lives? And so I don't have an answer for ballet because ballet for me is really only one style among many. And I know that people who are really very much in the ballet world, it feels such a huge thing. But ballet is not. Like, if you were to look at all of the dancing that happens on any one day in the world, a very, very small percentage of it is ballet. So I like to remind people that dance is all about participation, that dance was always first and foremost a behavior, and then it became an art form. So in my opinion, everybody can dance. It doesn't mean that they all do or they all choose to, but you go to a wedding where there's music on and any small kids involved, they will be dancing. They might not be dancing in a technical way, but they will be spinning and jumping to the beat of the music. That's dance. So for me, in an ideal world, everybody would have a place to dance where they would feel not judged, where they would feel comfortable to just be inside their body and express what's coming out of it, whether that's inspired by the music or an emotion that they're feeling or the other people that they're with. I really think that this is something that has been taken away from our culture that's really sad, because now if you want to dance, people have the expectation that you better be good at it. And I think that's such a shame, because sure, you can train to be, to become a really excellent technical dancer, of course, but the same way that we don't shame people for like singing in the shower or singing in their car, we shouldn't shame people for dancing if they want to dance, even if they're not quote unquote good at it. So I would love, and it was, partly my idea with, the adult ballet community that I kind of created here in Madrid, was to have a place that anyone could come, whether they were just a beginner or had danced when they were little and thought, oh, I'm not allowed to dance again because now I'm an adult, or whatever it was, just to have a place where this is about you being here because you want to be here, not because there's any expectation on how you have to do it. But ultimately, people enjoy getting better anyway. That's built into human beings. So inevitably, people want to improve in their own way, in their own time. But I would love to see a world where there were just more opportunities for people to dance together, because it's one of the biggest joys in our lives, is to dance together with other people. So that would be my ideal world.
It is. Yeah, mine too. And I hope we're moving toward that more and more. And I just appreciate you so much and all of the work that you're doing, for the adult ballet community, but also beyond that, just all of the coaching that you're doing and teaching people to come home to their bodies. I just think it's so important. And could you just tell people where they can find you on social media or your website, how they can connect with you?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much. This has been such a joy, and thank you for your wonderful questions. So yes, people can find me at Body Based Intelligence on YouTube. If you're interested in the more coaching, coming home to your body things, if you want beginner ballet variations and that kind of fun tutorial stuff, that's on my oh my goodness, I changed the name of that channel like a year ago. I think if you search Natalie Danza, you'll find it, but I think it's called Natalie Orr Dance or something now, I can't remember. But those two things are on YouTube, and then I'm Body Based Intelligence on Instagram as well. And I always love chatting to people in DMs or voice notes, so always feel free to send me one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And I'll link to all of that in the podcast description as well, so people can easily find it. And Natalie,
Perfect.
thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time so much. I know that you're in the midst of a busy move and everything going on, and with the time difference, I just really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
No, this was such a fun break. It's so nice to come back to things that are quote unquote normal and part of me that's not unpacking boxes. So it's been such a pleasure. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Wasn't Natalie so much fun? We laughed pretty much the entire time. It was such a great and inspiring conversation, and I learned so much from her about embodiment, which is something I didn't know much about before talking to her. You can learn more about it too on her website, natalieorr.com. I'll link to it in the show notes. And that's it. That's our first episode of 2024. We have another great guest joining us next month on February 6th, so stay tuned for that. And stay tuned for new episodes every month this year, wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, my name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm your host for the Adult Ballet Studio. If you like what you're hearing, please consider giving this podcast a rating and a review on your platform of choice. I love to hear from you, and it helps us grow so much. I would also love to know who you want to hear from in 2024. I've gotten some great suggestions from listeners so far, and I'm working on those as we speak, so thank you. Natalie was actually one of your suggestions for a guest, and I'm so glad you recommended her. I loved meeting her. There's a question box below each episode on Spotify that says who should join the studio next. If you don't mind sending me your suggestions, I'll try my best to make it happen. Or you can send me an email at theadultballetstudio@gmail.com or connect with me on Instagram at eblossfield to let me know about any comments, questions, or suggestions that you have. There are links to those contact methods in the show notes as well. I hope everyone is settling into the new year. If you have ballet goals for the year, send me a message on Instagram and let me know what they are. I would love to hear from you. I think a good goal for everyone is to follow Natalie's advice to nurture ourselves, focus on our growth, and most of all, keep dancing. See you at the bar.